What if the pain you keep calling your destiny is not destiny at all, but a hidden chain of causes that Spinoza can teach you to see? You already know this feeling. You wake up carrying something heavy, and you cannot name exactly what it is. It is not a single wound, it is the accumulation of them, the repeated disappointment, the sadness that returns without warning, the frustration of trying to move forward and finding yourself back in the same emotional place you swore you had already left. You are exhausted not because life is hard in a simple way, but because something inside keeps pulling you back. Something you cannot quite see or hold. And the strangest part is this: the events change. The job changes, the relationship changes, the city changes, but the feeling does not. There is a weight that follows you through different circumstances, like a shadow that belongs to you personally. You have blamed the people. You have blamed the timing. You have blamed yourself. And still the suffering continues. Not loudly, not always dramatically, but persistently. Like a low sound in a room you have learned to live with but cannot silence. Spinoza will not tell you to breathe deeply and trust the universe. He will not offer you comfort dressed as philosophy. What he will offer you is far more demanding and far more real. Understanding. A way of seeing your suffering not as a curse placed upon you, but as an effect with a cause. And once you begin to see the cause, the suffering does not disappear like a magic trick. It changes its power over you. It stops being a sentence passed on your life and becomes something the mind can finally examine. That is what this video is about. Not relief through illusion, relief through clarity. The most common explanation for suffering is also the most seductive one. Someone or something outside you is responsible. The economy destroyed your stability. The person who left you broke something in you. The childhood you did not choose shaped you into someone who cannot stop hurting. These explanations feel honest because they point to real events. They are not invented. The loss happened. The betrayal happened. The failure happened. And yet Spinoza would ask you to look again, not at the event, but at what your mind did with the event. Because the event alone does not determine how deeply you suffer. What determines that is the understanding you bring to it, or the lack of it. When the mind receives a blow and has no adequate way to interpret it, it does not simply feel the pain and release it. It attaches to it. It returns to it. It builds a story around it that becomes more real than the original event. This is not weakness. This is what happens when the mind meets something it cannot fully explain. The false prison is not the event itself. The real prison is the inadequate idea your mind formed about it. And because no one taught you to examine your ideas, that prison looks invisible. It looks like reality. It looks like just the way things are. Imagine living in a dark room. You have lived there so long that you have memorized where all the furniture is. You move around without hitting anything. You call it home, but the darkness is not neutral. In the dark, you cannot see the shapes clearly. You cannot see the walls or the distances accurately. You build a map in your mind, but the map is drawn in the dark. And every time the map is wrong, you are surprised by pain. You blame the furniture, you blame the room. It does not occur to you that the problem is the darkness itself. The problem is the absence of understanding. This is precisely what Spinoza saw when he looked at human suffering. The hidden enemy is not the world outside. The hidden enemy is inadequate knowledge. When the mind does not understand the causes of what it feels, it is like someone walking in that dark room and calling their bruises destiny. The pain is real, the bruises are real, but the cause is not fate. The cause is ignorance of what the room actually contains. And ignorance does not disappear on its own. It grows. It hardens. It starts to feel like permanent truth. Here is what makes this enemy so dangerous. The chain of suffering does not snap with time alone. A wound touched repeatedly without ever being understood does not heal. It becomes familiar. It becomes part of how you explain yourself to yourself. You stop asking why the wound keeps opening and start believing that open wounds are simply who you are. The hidden enemy has won completely at that point, not by force but by invisibility. Spinoza spent his life making that invisible enemy visible, and what he found was not a moral failure at the root of human suffering. He found a failure of understanding. Look at the world that surrounds you. You carry a screen that shows you every few minutes exactly how different someone else's life appears to be from your own. Someone is celebrating while you are struggling. Someone is beautiful while you feel unseen. Someone is advancing while you feel stuck. And the mind, without understanding the causes of this comparison, begins to absorb it as evidence. Evidence that you are less. Evidence that something is fundamentally wrong with your path. You do not need a philosopher to tell you this is happening. You feel it every day. That quiet hollowness after scrolling too long. That slight darkening that follows you back into the room. And it is not only comparison. There are financial pressures that feel crushing and impersonal. Family wounds that go back decades and still speak loudly in your current choices. Rejections that arrive without explanation and are filled in by your imagination. The modern world has given you an extraordinary number of distractions, but distractions are not understanding. You can fill every silence with noise and still carry the same hidden chain. In fact, you can use distraction so effectively that the chain becomes invisible even to you. Spinoza lived in a world that looked nothing like yours. But the architecture of the human mind he described is identical. The mind that does not understand its causes suffers in every century. If this is beginning to speak to something you have felt but could not name, consider pressing the like button now. Not as a transaction, but because this video might be the exact conversation someone in your life needs to have. Someone who is carrying suffering they cannot explain. A like helps it reach them. Baruch Spinoza was not a comfortable philosopher. He was not interested in telling people what they wanted to hear. He was excommunicated from his own community at the age of 23, condemned in some of the harshest language his religious world had available. He lived quietly after that. He ground lenses for a living. He wrote carefully. He thought with extraordinary discipline. And what he arrived at was a vision of reality that stripped away consolation and replaced it with understanding. He believed that understanding was not a luxury. It was the only genuine form of freedom a human being could reach. Spinoza looked at human emotions not as mysteries sent from above or punishments from below, but as effects, as natural events with natural causes. He said that the mind, like everything else in nature, operates according to causes. And when you suffer, you are not experiencing something supernatural or meaningless. You are experiencing an effect. The question Spinoza refused to abandon was always the same. What caused this? That question, simple as it sounds, is one of the most radical moves a human mind can make. Because most people, when they suffer, ask different questions. They ask who is to blame. They ask why me. They ask when it will end. Spinoza asked something else. He asked, what is the actual cause, and does my mind understand it clearly? Nothing in the mind appears without a cause. This is not a poetic idea. For Spinoza, it is a fundamental law of reality. Every emotion you have ever felt, every wave of sadness, every flare of fear, every knot of guilt, every surge of resentment arrived because something caused it. And the question is never whether a cause exists. The question is whether you know the cause clearly enough to act on that knowledge. Most people suffer on the surface. The sadness appears and they feel the sadness. The anger arrives and they obey the anger. The fear speaks and they follow the fear. They know the effect with great intimacy. They have named it, described it, identified themselves through it. But the cause remains in the dark. And when the cause is in the dark, the emotion has complete authority over the mind. It feels like weather. It feels like something that simply arrives and cannot be questioned. You did not choose it. You cannot see where it came from, and so you cannot see where it might go. This is what Spinoza called bondage. Not slavery to another person, but slavery to emotions whose causes the mind cannot see. A person in bondage is not a broken person. They are a person who is being moved by forces they have not yet examined. And the law of causes is simultaneously the chain and the key. While you do not know the cause, the chain holds. The moment you begin to understand the cause, the chain begins to loosen. Not because the pain vanishes, but because it loses its absolute authority over you. You can finally begin to relate to it rather than simply be it. Spinoza drew a line inside human experience that most people never draw in their own lives. On one side of that line are what he called passive emotions. These are emotions that happen to you. They arrive from outside causes that your mind has not yet fully understood. You feel them. You are moved by them, but you did not generate them from a place of clarity. They are not chosen. They are suffered. On the other side of that line are active states of mind, where the mind understands the causes of what it feels, and can therefore orient itself rather than simply be swept away. The journey from passive to active is not a journey from pain to painlessness. That distinction matters enormously. Spinoza was not promising a life without sadness or difficulty. He was offering something more durable than that. He was offering a different relationship to your inner experience, A relationship where you are the investigator, not only the victim. Where you can look at what you feel and ask what brought this here, what idea is feeding it, what belief is keeping it strong. That act of honest investigation begins to shift the emotional architecture of the mind. Understanding does not erase reality, it changes your position within reality. Think of it this way. Two people can experience the same loss. Both will feel pain, but one person understands something about why the pain is so intense. What in their history made this particular loss resonate so deeply? What belief is being challenged by it? That person still hurts, but they are not lost inside the hurt. They have a thread of understanding to hold on to. The other person only knows that they are suffering and that the suffering feels permanent. Spinoza was not offering numbness. He was offering the thread. You are not broken. That needs to be said clearly, not as empty reassurance, but as a philosophical conclusion. Spinoza's framework leaves no room for the idea that certain people are simply cursed with suffering while others are naturally free. What it does show is that people suffer differently depending on the clarity of the ideas their mind contains. And unclear ideas are not a character flaw. They are the natural condition of a mind that was given emotions before it was given philosophy. You were taught how to feel before you were taught how to understand what you feel. You absorbed fear before anyone explained what fear does to perception. You learned guilt before anyone showed you the difference between genuine moral responsibility and the guilt that serves only to diminish you. You developed desires before anyone asked you whether those desires were yours or inherited from a world that shaped you before you had a voice. This is not your failure. This is the human situation Spinoza was describing. The mind arrives in the world already in motion, already moved by causes it has not chosen and cannot immediately see. So when you suffer, the question is not what is wrong with me. That question leads you deeper into the prison. The question Spinoza invites is, what has the mind not yet understood about this? And that question opens a door. It does not tell you the suffering was not real. It does not minimize what happened to you. It simply refuses to let the suffering be the final word. It insists that inside every pattern of pain there is a cause waiting to be seen. And seeing that cause is not only possible. For Spinoza, it is the definition of freedom. Here is how the mechanism works in practice. Something happens. A loss, a rejection, a disappointment, a failure. The mind receives the event and immediately begins interpreting it. This is not optional. The mind interprets without asking permission. And if the mind does not have adequate ideas about what just happened, it fills the gap with imagination, with the worst possibility, with inherited beliefs about punishment and unworthiness, with comparisons to other losses that felt similar, with a story. That story is the critical moment, because the story is not neutral. It carries an emotional weight that can be heavier than the original event. The original event was a moment. It happened, and then it was over in time. But the story continues. The story gets replayed The story gets elaborated. The story starts to feel like a description of who you are rather than a description of what happened to you. And the more you replay it with the same inadequate understanding, the more real the story becomes. The pain is no longer just about the event. It is now about you. This is what Spinoza means when he speaks of the way confused ideas bind the mind. A temporary wound touched without understanding does not simply hurt. It becomes a mirror. And when you look in that mirror, you stop seeing a person who experienced something painful. You start seeing a person who is painful, a person who is the sadness, a person who is the rejection, a person who is the failure. This is not identity. This is a chain that has been worn so long it has started to look like skin. Once the chain looks like skin, it becomes almost impossible to question. Because questioning it feels like questioning yourself. If your suffering has become your identity, then the threat of understanding feels like the threat of disappearing. The mind resists. It protects the chain. It calls the chain its story, its truth, its real self. Spinoza would say that this resistance is itself the clearest sign that bondage is complete. When you cannot examine your own pain without feeling threatened by the examination, the passion has become the prison. Here is the truth that is difficult to face. You may be protecting the very explanation that keeps you suffering. Not because you want to suffer, not because you are self-destructive in some simple way, but because the explanation you have built, however painful, feels more familiar than the uncertainty of questioning it. You know what your suffering means in the story you have built. You know your role. You know the verdict about yourself and the world. And even when that verdict is painful, it is yours. It is certain. And the mind in its confusion often prefers painful certainty to the terrifying openness of not yet knowing. This is not a moral accusation. It is a description of what happens when the mind has been moving through life with inadequate ideas and no map for examining them. The uncomfortable truth is simply this. Suffering does not persist only because life is cruel. It also persists because the mind finds ways to maintain the ideas that sustain it. And the first act of freedom is not to escape the suffering. It is to honestly look at what you have been doing with it. What story have you built around it? What identity it has given you? What you would have to become if it no longer defined you. If you are beginning to see your suffering as something that can be understood rather than simply endured, write the word freedom in the comments. Not because the journey is over, but because something has shifted. Because you are beginning to ask a different question. And that different question is where it begins. The first movement toward freedom is deceptively simple. When you feel suffering arrive, do not rush to escape it and do not sink into it. Ask one question first. What caused this? Not who is to blame, but what is the actual chain of events, memories, beliefs, and encounters that produced this feeling in me right now? This is not therapy. This is not journaling as performance. This is the act of a mind that refuses to remain passive. Begin with the immediate trigger. What happened just before the emotion appeared? Was it a conversation, an image, A memory that surfaced without warning, a silence that felt like rejection? Trace the first visible cause. But do not stop there, because the immediate trigger is rarely the whole cause. Spinoza understood that every present emotion carries the weight of past experiences that taught the mind how to interpret similar events. So ask the next question. What memory does this feeling resemble? What earlier wound does this moment echo? Then go deeper still. What belief is operating underneath this pain? Is there a belief that you must not fail, that love requires sacrifice, that safety depends on control, that other people's approval determines your worth? These beliefs are causes. They are often inherited rather than chosen. They were absorbed from family, culture, religion, or repeated early experience. They feel like the natural furniture of the mind, like walls that have always been there. But they are causes, and once you name a cause, it no longer operates in complete darkness. Once you can see the chain, you are no longer simply the chain. The second practice is one of the most important distinctions philosophy can offer you. There is a profound difference between experiencing sadness and being sadness, between feeling fear and being a fearful person, between encountering failure and being a failure. Pain is something that moves through you. Identity is what remains when the movement has passed. And one of the great confusions of a suffering mind is that it allows temporary pain to make permanent declarations about what you are. You have pain. You are not the pain. This sounds simple. It does not feel simple when you are inside the experience. When the sadness is heavy enough, it fills the entire room. It becomes the only light in the space, which means it colors everything you see. In that state, you do not observe the sadness from a distance. You become it completely. And Spinoza would say that this is exactly what passive emotion does to the mind. It swallows the observer. The person disappears inside the feeling. Separating pain from identity does not mean suppressing the pain or pretending it is not there. It means developing what Spinoza called a higher idea, an idea of yourself that contains the pain but is not consumed by it. When you can say, I am experiencing this rather than I am this, something changes in the mind's relationship to the experience. The pain does not vanish, but you do not vanish either. And that is a different kind of ground to stand on. It is the beginning of what Spinoza meant by an active mind, a mind that experiences its reality without being completely dissolved by it. Spinoza had a powerful understanding of what increases and what decreases the mind's power. He observed that every encounter either adds to your capacity to think, act, and understand, or diminishes it. Not in a superficial way, in a deep and structural way. The people you spend time with, the content you consume, the environments you place yourself in, the thoughts you return to habitually, all of these are encounters. And each one is producing an effect inside you. The question is whether you are choosing those encounters consciously or simply absorbing them by default. Think about what happens in your mind after certain conversations. There are conversations that leave you feeling clearer, more capable, more genuinely yourself. And there are conversations that leave you smaller, more confused, more doubtful of your own perception. Both produce real effects. But most people do not think of this as a philosophical issue. They think of it as just life, just the people around them, just what happens. Spinoza would say that choosing better encounters is one of the most practical forms of philosophy available. It is not about controlling everything. It is about becoming conscious of what you are allowing to shape you. This applies to everything you regularly expose your mind to. The media that feeds your imagination with fear or comparison, the relationships that persistently return you to inadequate ideas about yourself, the habits of thought that loop through the same explanations without ever moving toward understanding. None of this is destiny. All of it is a set of encounters that the mind can begin to examine and, where possible, choose differently. Spinoza called joy the emotion that accompanies an increase in the mind's power. Every encounter that genuinely increases your understanding, your clarity, and your capacity to act from reason is, in his terms, moving you toward joy. Not happiness as a feeling, but joy as an expansion of what you can see and do. The fourth practice is the one that often meets the most resistance: accepting necessity. This phrase is frequently misunderstood, so it must be stated clearly. Accepting necessity does not mean approving of everything that happened to you. It does not mean pretending that injustice was actually just, or that cruelty was secretly wisdom, or that your pain was deserved. Those would be spiritual lies. Accepting necessity means something far more precise and far more demanding. It means understanding that what happened through a chain of causes that were real and that produced real effects. It means recognizing that reality does not owe you a different past. The event occurred. The wound was real. The cause was real. And continuing to fight the fact that it happened, continuing to direct all your energy toward the reality that it should not have been this way, is a battle the mind wages against what is already over. That battle is exhausting, and it keeps you permanently in the past, where the wound lives, rather than in the present, where the causes can be understood and the next choice can be made. Accepting necessity in Spinoza's sense is an act of intelligence, not submission. When you understand why something happened through its actual causes, you no longer have to fight it. You no longer have to maintain the rage, the resentment, or the obsessive return to the injury. This frees an enormous amount of the mind's energy. Energy that was spent maintaining the war against what already happened can now be directed toward understanding what is happening and choosing what to do next. Resentment is not justice. It is a chain that attaches you to the past far longer than the event required. Understanding the causes of that past is what finally allows the chain to release. Let us gather what has been revealed. Suffering does not persist only because life is harsh. It persists because the mind is operating with inadequate ideas about what it experiences. When you do not understand the causes of your pain, the pain expands into the space that understanding would have occupied. It fills the silence with imagination, with fear, with inherited beliefs and with stories that become more powerful than the original event. This is not weakness. It is the natural result of a mind that was never taught to investigate its own causes. Spinoza showed us that emotions are not random weather. They are effects. Every sadness, every fear, every wave of guilt, every surge of resentment arrived through a chain of causes. And while you only know the effect, that chain holds complete authority over you. But the moment you begin to trace the causes, something shifts. Not because the pain disappears, but because your relationship to it changes. You are no longer only the person being hurt. You are also becoming the person who can see why the hurt is happening and what the mind has been doing with it. Understanding does not erase reality. It changes your position within it. And from a different position, different choices become visible. There is a version of you that has spent years being moved by forces it could not name. That version of you is not shameful. It is simply a mind that has been doing the best it can with the tools it was given. But there is another version of you that is possible. Not a version that does not suffer. Not a version that has transcended all emotion, but a version that can look at what it feels and ask the real question. What caused this? What idea is sustaining it? What would I choose if I could see clearly? That version of you is not a destination you arrive at once and remain. It is a practice. A way of turning the mind toward its own experience with curiosity instead of only with suffering. Spinoza did not promise that philosophy would make life painless. He promised something rarer and more honest than that. He said that a person who truly understands is freer than a person who simply obeys. And the freedom he meant is not the freedom of an easy life. It is the freedom of a mind that can finally see the chains that once moved it without its knowledge. The moment you begin to see the chains, you have already begun to become someone the chains cannot fully hold. At the beginning of this journey, there was a question. What if the pain you keep calling your destiny is not destiny at all, but a hidden chain of causes that Spinoza can teach you to see? You have now seen enough to know the answer. It is not destiny. It has never been destiny. It is cause and effect playing out inside a mind that was given enormous emotional power long before it was given the tools to understand that power. And the difference between calling it destiny and calling it a chain of causes is the entire distance between bondage and freedom. If this philosophy has begun to change the way you see your own suffering, subscribe to Spinoza Reveals. Not because philosophy will fix everything in one video, but because this is a practice that deepens over time. Every question Spinoza asked is one you can learn to ask for yourself. Every reframe this channel offers is one more light turned on in a room you have been navigating in the dark. The mind that understands is the mind that is free, and that mind is yours to develop. This is Spinoza Reveals, and the journey has only just begun.